Good evening. I'm not used to saying good evening in conversations with compassion. It's usually good morning, but good evening, everyone. Everyone watching live, anybody watching live, coming and joining us, and anybody watching on the replay. It's wonderful to have you here for another Conversations with Compassion. And this week we are at a different time because Cassie, who's joining us, is in a different time zone. So we've gone for an evening one for me, but Cassie, I believe it's a morning one for you. And just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, my name's Helen Ferguson. I am a specialist trauma therapist. I've been working in trauma now for over 22 years. And I specialise in guiding women, professional entrepreneurial business women, to emotional and psychological safety. After they've experienced childhood trauma, attachment trauma, relational trauma, developmental trauma, and sexual abuse. So I help them not just in the sense of their success of their business, but actually in helping them be who they need to be and want to be and find their true, authentic selves. And I set up Conversations with Compassion because over the last few years, what I've been hearing from women in particular, and some men that get through my branding pink and purple, is that self-compassion is self-indulgent, that it's lazy, that it's narcissistic, that it's all about ego, and there's no time for it, there's no space for it. And whilst I have those conversations with women in the room, i.e. online with me, I wanted to kind of debug those and demystify self-compassion. I wanted to actually bring those conversations to the fore with professional entrepreneurial business women who are succeeding in their business, and actually are an inspiration to any woman watching and man watching that is unsure about self-compassion, is unsure about how to bring it to the fore, how to welcome it. So that's why Conversations with Compassion is here. And so this week I'm really, really excited, and it feels like ages and ages and ages ago that I met with Cassie and asked her to join me in this. So it does feel like it was perhaps the summer, but Cassie has kindly agreed to come and join me today and have what I know will be a wonderful conversation. So Cassie, it's over to you. Please spend some time just introducing yourself and letting everyone else, I know who you are, but letting everybody else know who you are.
Hi Helen, and thank you, and hi everyone. So I'm Cassie. As Helen said, I'm a holistic life coach, and I predominantly support heart-led women who tend to be in their startup businesses. And I use my own innate gifts to support that journey from healing the trauma into really stepping into your own potential and stepping into those gifts that you do all have inside. There may be those moments of not feeling good enough or not realising what your own potential is, and I really empower you to do that and step into those gifts where you may have felt stuck or disempowered previously.
Wonderful. Not that dissimilar to what I do. I think we are on the same path. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I know this is going to be a wonderful conversation. I usually start out, I generally have 4 questions, but we end up having lots of different kind of pathways in this conversation. But Cassie, I wonder if we could start with just you kind of sharing with us what self-compassion means to you personally.
For me, I'll start by saying it's really important. And the reason it is so important for me is I've got 2 daughters. And growing up with my own parents and grandparents who didn't show themselves really any compassion, it's really important that I break the cycle with that. Mm-hmm. And for me, self-compassion has been a hard journey, but it's also been one of learning a lot about myself and learning that if I can't be good to me, how can I expect anybody else to be? So if I can't sort of show that it's okay to love myself, it's okay to be comfortable with my body, it's okay to be taking some time out and sitting on my mat if that's what I need that day. I need to give myself that, but I also need to show that to my children, that it's available to them without judgment. So yeah, it's really important.
That's exactly right. That there isn't a judgment around it. There isn't a self-judgment, but equally there isn't a judgment from other people that you're doing that. And often what I hear from the very kind of high-performing women that I work with is that that sense of judgment, that if they're not pushing themselves to success, to succeed, to perfection, then they're not succeeding. They're not succeeding in being who they are. And then, when I'm challenged, I do challenge them in a very gentle, compassionate way. I challenge them, but then when we start to think about it, and I'm sure it's the same with you, being able to kind of hold a non-judgmental stance around self-compassion and how important it is, not just for ourselves, but also for those, I don't have children, but for those people around us, including children and young people who should be able to experience it and let it show and let it be very and be part of a flourishing part of themselves.
Yeah, and it's showing people, whoever they are around us, that it's available. And I learned the hard way this lesson, because I was in that toxic, patriarchal, aggressive environment in corporate IT, where there were very few good leaders. And, it was really important from learning that journey that I then shared what I had learnt. And when I look back at reflectively how I processed just day-to-day life there, where I focused my energy, it was so sort of, in my terms, that it was so much of that yang energy. It was so much of the masculine. Every sort of form of exercise that I did was aggressive. Right. Every way that I approached things was aggressive. It was judgmental. There was guilt attached. There was shame attached. And certainly there was guilt and shame attached before I became a parent. And then once I did become a parent, it was compounded hugely, because somebody else then was you were responsible for somebody else and for that, for influencing their journey.
And getting it right for them.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Whilst on the surface, trying to seem that everything's okay for everybody else, and inside you're quietly dying a little bit. So all the things that I thought I was doing previously to look after myself and to be compassionate to myself were actually just compounding a really poor outcome for me.
Compounding shame, do you think, or compounding?
Everything, I think. I think it compounded guilt, shame. Certainly, I had no compassion for myself. I was judgmental of myself and of others. I have to hold that up and say, I was judgmental of others because I was so insecure in myself. I really didn't like who I was, and I was constantly seeking reassurance that this version of me was okay, and I didn't seem to ever get that, no matter what job I did. And to be honest, even when I did have some great leaders at work, which were both coincidentally male, even when they did, give me that reassurance and sign me up for these leadership programs because they saw the potential in me, I couldn't take that. I couldn't take it in myself at all. So it was a real hard journey, I think, but one which I am eternally grateful for, because I wouldn't be where I am now if it wasn't for that.
So do you think that there was a pivotal kind of moment, pivotal experience, pivotal time that you went, this has absolutely got to change, that I need and to notice and acknowledge that actually what you needed was self-compassion, not the external validation or the external success, as it were, because we can be successful. My God, I'm sure I love being successful. I love what I do, and I love the achievements that I've made. But at the same time, I probably couldn't have done a lot of those without the self-compassion that I know that I noticed when I was in my NHS corporate kind of role, of recognizing that I was in not a compassionate place. I wasn't receiving compassion, and therefore was also not giving myself the space for self-compassion. So was there a pivotal kind of experience or time that you went, wow, this is what I've got to do?
I don't actually think there was. I think it was a real journey of awakening for me. And I think I was starting to notice, but there wasn't the one thing that kind of made me think, right, this is it. I've just got to stop. But I was locked away a lot within myself. I was losing relationships around me because I couldn't communicate effectively. I certainly wasn't fulfilled in work anymore, and was really struggling with relationships in work, and finding I'd always thrived really actually on that sort of busy environment and the delivery, and feeling like I'd done a really good job. And it was not fulfilling at all anymore. And I just found myself slipping further and further into this place and this person that I didn't like. And then also, I couldn't communicate. I couldn't communicate with my loved ones. I hid behind my children. I hid behind my situation. My husband works away from home a lot. And I hid behind not being available. And I wasn't available. I was so ridiculously unavailable to most things and most people, and that people started to drift off along the way. I think what started to turn it around for me is also some of those things that I'd noticed that I was losing. So that I lost some really valuable friendships, but I found my yoga mat. And that really, I just got chills saying that. That really was my journey to self-compassion, to self-acceptance, because even now, being a yoga teacher, I'm never going to be the one that's, contorting themselves into ridiculous shapes. I'm just not that bendy. I'm not that stretchy, and that's okay. I'm good with that. But it took me a long time to be compassionate with myself about that. And stepping onto my mat was that first step in that journey, really, because I realised that all the things that I'd been doing, like HIIT workouts, boxing, all of this aggressive stuff, just was not giving me what I needed emotionally.
And when you think about kind of, being wired for compassion and self-compassion, literally kind of wired, we are wired for it. When I'm not saying that all those high intensity workouts are bad.
No, me either.
But when you think about what happens in terms of our hormones when we do those, they are actually contraindicative of the wiring for compassion.
Yes,
we're actually going against ourselves. And I know from, because I used to do quite very high intensity workouts, Insanity Max 30, all the really big, and push myself, because I thought if I'm fit, if I'm healthy, if I look a particular way, then all is well with the world, And actually, wasn't about that. I felt good, but I didn't feel any more compassionate towards myself.
No.
So it takes something different for us to recognize that wiring, and to listen to that wiring in the nerves, in the body, in the mammalian part of the brain, that says you have it within you to look after yourself, to accept yourself for every part of you. Not just the slim bits,
Yeah.
not just the attractive bits, not just the good hair, it's every single part of you. And that's why I always explain that self-compassion is the cornerstone to self-acceptance. Without self-compassion, you won't reach self-acceptance. It will be a slightly off kilter. You may reach acceptance in some areas, but not true kind of self-acceptance. Do you think, you've touched on them already, but what were some of the obstacles, do you think, and how you overcame those to kind of going and, to eventually stepping onto the yoga mat?
Yeah, I think it's funny because I think when you're in it, you don't always recognize it, do you? And I know when I look back at things now, I think there's certain chunks of it actually I don't even remember, because I think I was just constantly in fight or flight. I don't think that I was really ever tuned in with myself. I was never really loving of myself, compassionate of myself. Hence why I never accepted myself, like you said. And my role models had been, my mum, God love her, is active all the time. She's constantly busy, constantly got to be doing something. So that was the lesson that I learned, that you've got to be constant. You can't, it's actually not good to sit and rest, because you should be doing something. So it was really, really important to start to allow some of those things for myself. But the relationships were a huge one for me. I was losing so many people along the way. And if I'm totally honest, I think if I'd have continued in the way that I was, I probably would have lost my marriage also, because I think for a long time you can sort of blame other people for what's going on and you can push it over to them. But it was absolutely, a lot of it was me in all of my relationships. It was I think going back to work after maternity leave sparked a real change for me in trying to find some sort of balance in being everything for everybody, because I still had to go and do all of these hours at work, and I still had to have sort of my children, and I never felt good asking my parents to help if I wanted to do something social, because they helped me when my husband was away, and then I wanted to spend time with my husband when he was home, but then didn't feel that I could do that. And it was just this whole constant never really allowing myself to do anything or to feel things. I think I was numbed out a lot.
Okay. And that's where kind of burnout and emotional overwhelm and emotional burnout sit very, very closely with not being able to recognize, what's, and numbing. I'll use your word, actually, numbing that compassion, numbing that wiring, numbing the messages that we should be listening to within ourselves, because they're very clear messages. I was just listening to you about when your children were born, and of course, as we're wired for self-compassion, I wonder whether that was a slight trigger for kind of, there's this baby that needs me and it's crying, and it needs feeding, and is the little one in pain? Is that, are they hurting? Are they hungry? And when you're wired for compassion, and as we are, when we see that, when we experience that, it triggers it within ourselves to be able to respond to it. And then we sometimes go, oh, yeah. It's like the light bulb kind of goes on.
Yeah. And I think when you first have children, all of that compassion goes into them.
Yeah.
Like I had identical twins, and they were premature. They were in hospital for 3 weeks. When they came out of hospital, we had my husband at home for a week before he went back to work.
Gosh,
offshore. Wow. So then I was on my own with, not even full-term babies still by that point, still classed as premature babies, doing it all really by myself.
Wow.
So I didn't have time to be compassionate for myself.
No.
And I certainly didn't have the tools.
No. And that is about, somebody was talking to me yesterday about this, and they were saying, how do I find the space? Because I'm giving it to everyone else. And I said, you have to allow yourself, you have to give yourself the permission to have the space.
Yeah, and know that you're worthy of it.
And know that you're worthy of it, because often we're so busy external, just external, oh gosh, give the compassion to everyone, that we often then forget that we're actually worthy of receiving that compassion, but receiving it from ourselves as well as other people. So she was like, oh, I thought it was just giving to everyone. I said, if you just give and give and give and give, and not accept it into yourself and not respond to your compassionate needs, you'll end up with compassion fatigue. You will not then, and then you'll stop the functioning, then you'll stop being able to respond to what other people want. So we had this very kind of long conversation about it yesterday. It was a client that we were having this, because she was, I don't know whether, my clients, I think, are probably slightly different to yours. They really challenge me on some of the things that I say and some of the things that I get them to do. And a lot of it is, somatic attachment healing and polyvagal. And so, it's kind of, it can be quite challenging. But, kind of where is the space? And I say, the space is within you. You've got to give yourself permission to have it, and you've got to forgive yourself.
Yeah. And I think when I certainly look at my own journey and clients that I work with, there's this real sense of you've just got to get on with it, and so then we respond, our response is a traumatic response to what we are shown and taught, and the messages that we are given, however subliminal they may be. We have to get on with it. And certainly women, I think, around my age group and beyond, having the influence of Margaret Thatcher growing up, and the aggressive, this is how women have to be. You have to work hard. You have to be more aggressive than them. You have to challenge. You have to, but not in a good way. None of these tap into the skills that we've got as women. They don't tap into our natural energy. They actually tell us that everything that we have got is wrong. And then we attach guilt and shame to the feelings that come up for us naturally. And I think men do that too, because, the one thing that's attached to men with shame is weakness. That's a real shame for them. But actually, it's not weak, there's that whole sort of Brené Brown talk, isn't there, around that, about vulnerability and shame and guilt. And, and it's huge, the differences between the shame and the guilt, but actually all of the stuff that we put on ourselves because we are surrounded by this way that we have to be, and we are never made to feel that actually the way that we are is enough. We see that in the messages, even now, that boys are given as boys and girls are given as girls. That a boy's got to be tough, he's got to be strong, he's got to be sporty, all of this. A girl's got to be pretty, and she's got, I was never really any of those girl things, but I certainly wasn't any of the boy things. So I was lost from a real young age with regards self-compassion. And it continued throughout my adult life. And just was triggered constantly, because we're just horrid to ourselves.
Yeah. And when we're horrid to ourselves, and when we've experienced horridness from other people, the layers of it then become very complicated and very complex, and it's then peeling back what's somebody else's narrative and what's our own.
Yeah.
And generally, the way I just describe it is it's like kind of this ribbon that's I like to describe it in a gentle way. I don't like to describe it in a thorny way. That there is this ribbon that's been wrapped around, and it gets tighter, and it gets very comfortable. It kind of gets slightly embedded in the skin as well, and when we start to discover self-compassion, when we start to accept it, when we start to acknowledge our worthiness, we start to unravel that ribbon, so that we can actually then, the ribbon is usually the stories of other people, the narratives of the past, the narratives of the criticism, of judgment of ourselves. And we unravel that and we find our true, real selves. And it's a very liberating process. And so self-compassion is a hugely empowering process in that healing journey of that unraveling and finding. It sounds cliche, but finding ourselves. But actually, it is. It is. The women that I've worked with, and over the years, but also even quite honestly, some of the men I've worked with, you kind of unravel that, and they go, oh gosh, it's okay to be me like this.
Yeah. And like you mentioned before, Helen, just when you were talking about the ribbon, it's all of the things that we have had around us, so it's the finding of the self, because actually a lot of these things that impact our physical, our mental well-being, our energetic well-being, they're not actually ours.
No, they're not.
We didn't start off with that. We
No.
just, trauma doesn't have to be something really horrific, and it doesn't have to be something that you've experienced yourself. No. And
trauma is any experience that causes emotional dysregulation.
Yeah. So if you're a witness to it, it can still, deregulate you or unregulate you. And it's acknowledging, it's acknowledging that, isn't it? That, because we're not taught that. We're taught to kind of just put it in a box, or it didn't happen to me anyway, so it can't be bothering me. But it is, it is. And then you lock it down, and then something else comes on top. And I noticed in myself the physical implications of that, of not allowing myself to be compassionate to myself. And energetically, the way that it impacts our cells, how, we need to be able to working on clearing that internally, as well as sort of just the emotional, the brain, that like the polyvagal, like you talk about, all of these things that can help us, but we don't know that the tools, but also we don't understand that this problem with our digestion is something that's been caused from all of these things previously. We don't understand that these problems with our hips or our lower back are, connected to the psoas, the muscle of the soul. So when we're going through things emotional, it's tight. We don't make those connections actually. That, oh gosh, I always get a cold at Christmas. Well, yeah, because you're completely wiped out, because all you've done for November and December is give everything to everybody else. And when you stop, it makes sure that it stops you, so that you cannot go anywhere until you have taken this rest that you need.
Yeah. And it's, I remember when I used to, because I used to manage child and adolescent mental health in the Southwest in the UK for 0 to 18 and for looked after children as well. And, I remember kind of, hardly having any time off. But, the clinicians that I used to manage, they'd start to have their holiday, and then they'd say, well, I'm ill. And I'd be like, yeah, this is not a compassionate environment. So when you're giving and giving and giving, and then you stop, to try and look after yourself, that's when the body goes, right, we've been holding this. We've been holding it. We've been holding on to it so that you can just get through to this point where you're saying, I can rest now. Well, rest means that you're going to feel it.
Yeah.
Rest means that you're absolutely going to feel what you have been experiencing.
Yeah.
And so it's, this is, it's like, when I was, in fact, part of my work, I don't advertise this bit because it tends to be referral or recommendation, but I work with neurodiverse children and young people. And I was talking to a young boy today who's been through many challenges, and he was saying how when he's angry, it really feels like he's going to wet himself, because, and his anger is frustration, and it's confusion, and it's, there's so much that goes on in the world for him. And so, I was explaining to him, well, that's your body feeling it. So we have to work through that. So we were getting all of that, but, for him to recognize, at what is he, 10, that his body is telling him how he's feeling.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. And I think, there's a lesson to be learned for us all.
Absolutely. Because we stop listening to our bodies, don't we, as well? And when you think about, it feels like he's going to wet himself, in that area from an energetic perspective, it's about your relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
Does that not make complete sense, that's how it's feeling for him, because he's so frustrated, not only, it's about relationship with others too, but, with those externals, with himself in maybe the way that he responds. And, they are so intuitive, and it's keeping hold of that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And whenever I talk to anyone and they say things to me like, I feel sick I felt sick to the stomach. Well, that's a message.
Yeah.
That's a message that your body's telling you, and we need to listen to that, because I work with bioenergetic therapy as well. So I say, we need to kind of listen to all the aspects of body. So when you say that, that's not just a flippant kind of comment. Yeah. It's a reality.
Yeah.
You are literally feeling sick because of your emotion, because of your emotional dysregulation, because of your trauma, because of the response. So it's amazing to hear that from a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
And, he's an incredibly intelligent 10-year-old, but very, 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 in a way, traumatized as well himself. So, working through that, and him just going, I feel it like this. And I was like, oh, well done for saying it. So I wish more people would say, this is how it feels for me.
Yeah.
Not because it's not just the emotion, and often we can't say what the emotion is until we actually recognize physically what it is. It's almost like it links in together. So.
And there's this real opportunity for children, isn't there? With working with people like yourself and having these avenues that they can explore, that they keep that, whereas we were very much conditioned to sweep that under the carpet. And it'll be all right, just get on with it, you'll be fine. We were given all of those messages, and actually, I hope that the children now are being given different messages so that they're not having to do the journey we've had to do in later life. We found it later, let's give it to them now. Let's give it to their parents so that their parents can make sure that they continue to grow. I work with a wonderful woman who has a neurodiverse child and is really working on a tool set to be able to give this to other people. She's absolutely incredible, but she's done the journey herself, and she recognizes that she needs to work with boys, families, to help them really. And it's so important, so valid.
Yeah. And that's why, bringing it back to your statement earlier on about, you needing to be absolutely aware of self-compassion for you, so that you can demonstrate that, you can give that gift to your children, to say, this is how important it is. This is, and it's part of who you are, and you don't have to. I remember as a young person, teenager, early 20s, being told how oh gosh, you're really strong, you're really resilient. And no, just, not being given the opportunity to actually say what is actually happening. But
yeah,
for you to be able to demonstrate, share, map out, allow both girls, your girls to experience their compassion, their self-compassion, to have that space, is the gift that you're given.
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely.
It will be generational. It has to be generational.
Oh, it is. I mean, I see so much of my responses in them, and responses that I've tried not to do or not to be, in my own learning journey, but it is just, in them. I have definitely energetically, genetically passed that on to them. So it's really working on this now at a younger age for them to, I was always independent. I always ran away from things when I got hurt. If I fell over and grazed my knee, I hid.
Yeah.
You couldn't console me until I was ready to come out, because I was humiliated.
Yeah.
And I see that in, especially in one of them, I see that the other one's quite internal. She internalizes a lot of stuff like I did, so I really notice this, and I try my very hardest to not just tell them that they have to do things in a different way, because that's not what I want to do, but I want them to know that actually it's okay. It's okay to ask for help, because it doesn't mean that they're no good at something. It just means that maybe they need another way of somebody explaining something to them. And, I think we all need that, whatever age we are, because
there's no shame in vulnerability.
No, because we all feel things differently, and we all learn differently, and we all, you can put two people in the same room, but two people are going to come out with a completely different experience. So, it's okay not to be the same as everybody else, and find what works for you. And that's, that's the same with being compassionate to yourself as well, isn't it? There's no prescription.
No.
For me, finding that was getting on my mat in the first place. It opened a door for me. That might be somebody else's worst nightmare, to think that they've got to get on the mat to do that, and that's absolutely fine, as long as you're finding your way into that, your way into your compassion.
I went to quite an extreme and left my job and left the UK. That was how I found mine. That was my mat that I stepped on.
Yeah. Well, I've done that since as well. So
yeah, exactly. So, just a final question, really, and I think you've already touched on this. In terms of the work that you do now, how do you look after your compassion, your self-compassion in that process? Because you're giving so much to your clients in the same way that I do mine, that we have to recognize our self-compassion and how important it still is for us, because it's a continuing journey. So how do you now, in your busy entrepreneurial professional business world, and role, maintain that self-compassion for you?
It's a journey. It's still a journey. Like you say, we continue to learn. For me, I know that I need to give myself space. I need to give myself, before it gets to the point where I need to lock myself away to decompress, I need to give myself the space. I need to prepare myself energetically before I can be available for anybody else. Some mornings that might be getting up a little bit earlier and having a coffee by myself. Other mornings, it's really diving deeper into my practice, getting on my mat, doing my meditation, journaling. Sometimes it's getting out in the fresh air. But for me, it is very much about space. If I don't have the space within myself, I cannot hold the space for others.
For other people. Yeah, exactly. Cassie, this has been a wonderful conversation. I've loved it. And I could, every week I say this, and I always truly mean it. I literally could continue for ages just kind of having this. I feel like I need to create a group conversations with compassion and get everybody that's been on so far and just get you all in a group and actually have this wonderful conversation.
We'd need a day, Helen.
We need a day.
We'd need a day, wouldn't we?
Yeah. Well, I'm still in the process of because I'm moving back to the UK soon, and I don't want to do it until I move back. But I had a conversation with Beth and conversations with compassion, and we came up with the tagline that compassion cuts through the crap. So I'm kind of wanting t-shirts and mugs made.
Yeah.
Compassion cuts through the crap. But we were saying it just literally does. I mean, the crap is was Bethan's term. I think what it does is it cuts. It kind of cuts through the pain. It cuts through the story. It cuts through the trauma. It lets you know that you can actually heal and feel empowered, and that you're not going to get it right straight away, and it's okay not to get it right straight away. It's okay, and it's at your own pace, and what you do is enough.
Compassion's a journey to contentment, isn't it?
Yes.
In whatever you need to be content about. It's allowing yourself to take that step really into that. It's there's a yoga quote, and I'm sure I will misquote it, but basically it's about the journey to yourself is through yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And it absolutely is that.
Absolutely is. Yeah, it's a beautiful quote, because it's so true. Mm-hmm. And I always say, that everything you have, everything you need to heal, to feel emotionally liberated, to feel emotionally free and psychologically free, is in you.
I reiterate the same message. So I am with you completely there. We just need to find the way to tap into it and know that it's okay to have it and not be reliable on those external sources or validations.
Exactly. I was about to say amen, but I'm not religious.
Amen.
Amen to that.
Whoever your God is.
It's kind of, sometimes one thing that actually, makes my clients really laugh is because when they have these kind of epiphany moments where they really get it and this light bulb's going on, I literally do a Mexican wave in the room, online with them. And they're like, oh, you did that. And I'm like, yes, because I've heard what you said, and absolutely you're at the right point. And I do these kind of weird things of Mexican waves and stuff. So I was about to do that and then decided to go with amen. Cassie, where can people find you to connect with you if they want to?
So they can connect with me on Instagram, Cassie_Mather_Reid, or on my website, www.cassiematherreid.com, or hit me up on Facebook, Cassie Mather Reid, Holistic Life Coach.
Brilliant. And I always forget to do this, so I'm going to remind myself to do this. If anybody's watching, I have a free community, the Heart of Healing Alchemy, for high-performing women who are feeling successful in what they're doing, but are feeling lost in who they are. And so it's a new group. I had an old group which I closed recently, and I opened this new one with a very specific focus around trauma and healing trauma as professional entrepreneurial businesswomen. So it is the Heart of Healing Alchemy on Facebook, and anybody watching is welcome to join that if you're a woman or identify as a woman. So with that, Cassie, having said that, we have had some love from Mandy. She's been watching, so she sent us some love earlier on.
Thank you, Mandy.
I know that this gets a lot of people watching on replay, so if there's any comments or any questions that people have, and I will also send them across to you.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to answer anything that might come up.
Brilliant. Thank you for being with me here this evening. this morning.
Thank
you. This morning.
This morning. You could have said this morning on the intro, couldn't you?
and for sharing, you know, such an inspirational story, such an inspirational part of yourself for people to listen to and to feel connected with, so that they don't feel as disconnected from self-compassion as they perhaps once did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. So with that, everyone, I will say au revoir, and I will see you next week with Conversations with Compassion, where I am joined by Nick Davies, and that's going to be another wonderful, inspirational conversation. So I will see you all soon with love and compassion from me. Hold yourselves tight. You've got this. I'll see you soon.